Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Today, we'll be talking about wireframing in Figma. This is a really important concept to understand, as it's the most basic structure, if not the skeleton of the website, and it can help bring your ideas to life. I'll be showing you guys the fundamentals and walking you through my design process. But before we get into it, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to stay up to date with tutorials. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so I want to begin talking about the wireframe fundamentals. We know a wireframe is the basic structure of our website. You can think of it as being a blueprint to a house or even brainstorming ideas before you write an essay. It's just to communicate your ideas and to get the layout down. We're not really worried about branding or images or color or the overall aesthetic. We're just worried about this layout and getting our ideas out. And all these ideas can be refined later, as we're going to create this wireframe and share it with team members and get their feedback, and we're going to slowly improve our wireframe. So we can start out with something as simple as a sketch known as a low fidelity wireframe, where we're just drawing our wireframe, and then we can slowly increase this as we get feedback from teammates, and we could make a high fidelity project where we're designing in Figma and we're adding interactive elements. So a wireframe can be super simple or it can be advanced. We can also design a wireframe for each page of our website, and that is usually what you want to do. But for this project, and just to give you an idea and to save time, I'm just going to show you an example of a wireframe I designed, and I'll take you through my process of it, and it will just be for one page. Alright, so step one is going to be to write down your requirements. So think to yourself, how are you going to lay this website down? Is it going to be like a navigation bar? Maybe you're going to have like a little about section, and so on, so on. Just think about how you're going to lay it out. And what you're going to do is write those down. So I took a little post-it note here and wrote them down. I'll go ahead and show this to you. Feel free to pause on that. But what I've done is broken mine into navbar, promo, categories, carousel, mailing list, and footer. So those are each of my sections, and to the side of it, I went ahead and wrote down what I think is going to go into that. You don't have to do that, but I like to do that just to help me start off. And none of that is set in stone. You can make changes to that, take away, remove, but it's just to help you get started by writing down your requirements. Alright, so moving on to step two, we're going to create a grid. What we're going to do is do mobile first design. So we're going to start with the mobile, move to tablet, then move to desktop. This is recommended as it's going to be the easiest when creating a wireframe, and it's a lot easier to solve problems on mobile first and then adjust to a bigger size. So grabbed us an iPhone 14 frame, grabbed us a layout grid, and I'm going to change this to columns, and we're going to do a 4 column count with 25 margin. Alright, so step 3 is going to be breaking this grid down into sections. The sections are the requirements we put down at the start. So I've done like nav bar, promo, categories, carousel, mailing list, and footer. So I'm going to go ahead and break that grid down into those things. So what I'm going to do is grab a rectangle, and since I started with a nav bar, go ahead and drag it and get an idea of how big my nav bar is going to be. So I think that's a good size. It doesn't have to be perfect. Next, we're going to add text to label what the sections are. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So I can do bold. I can set this to 20, and then I can move it, say, about there. Next section I done was promo. So I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger like this, and I can go ahead and label this and put promo. The one thing though is you see these are the same color, each section. You don't want your sections to be the same color, so we're going to go ahead and change this. We'll make it a little bit darker like so, and I'll change this to white. And that's the promo section. And you're just going to repeat this process for each section, and don't be afraid to adjust these things as you need. And if you run out of room on your frame, you can always click on the frame and then pull this down to make it longer. So yeah. Alright, so I went ahead and finished this up. I adjusted a little bit of the sizes, but you get an idea of what I'm doing here. So yeah. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to select everything we put in here. Once we do that, we're going to want to hold shift and move all this to the right, like so. And to get it to show, because this may not be showing when you put it over, just go to iPhone and make sure clipped content's turned off. Once we do this, we're just going to want to grab all the rectangles like so, and we're just going to drag it over to the left like this. Next, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab all of our text, and we just want to turn that to white, all of them. So now that they're all white and we can see them, I may honestly push this over to the side just a little bit more so we can see. Now what this has done is broken as we design. It's going to be broken into sections so we know that what we're working on. So yeah. Alright, so moving on to step 4, we can go ahead and start our wireframe for mobile. What I like to do, and this is especially good if you're new to this, is get inspiration from other websites. So say I'm unsure of how I want to do my nav bar here. What I can do is go to a website. So here I can go to Adidas. I can inspect by right clicking and then go up here to mobile. And this is what it looks like on a mobile, as that's what we're designing for. Now we can kind of see the sections. So this is a nav bar, they have this hero section, and they have these other sections. So we can just take inspiration, not necessarily copying, but getting ideas from them. So I personally like how they done the hamburger menu to the left and they put the logo in the center. I would prefer for the logo to be more in the center, so I may incorporate that in mine, but this gives me an idea of what I want to do. Maybe I want an account and a bag and a search. So I can go ahead and start incorporating that into my own. Alright, so there's 2 ways you can incorporate icons into your wireframe. The first way is just grabbing a box like a rectangle and drawing a shape like this. You're going to throw in a line inside of a rectangle, and then what you're going to do is throw in another line like this. And what you can do is you can group these if you want, so Control G. Now I have a group and they will move together, and you can hold Alt and you can go ahead and drag these out for however many icons you want. And if you wanted to, you could even add text up here so you know what they are. You could do that, and now you know that this is a hamburger icon. I personally don't like doing it this way unless I'm doing an image, so you can use this icon to substitute for images. But personally, what I like to do is you can go to the internet, you can download PNGs, vectors, and you can just bring them in. For this, we're going to be using the noun project here. And what I can do is I can just search what I need. So for example, if I need a hamburger icon like so, I can just grab one like this, and I can even just drag this over like this, and I can add these icons like so. And you're pretty much just going to repeat this process until you have a full wireframe. Now this can be very time consuming and overwhelming, but just give yourself time, work on it, and get through it. Alright, so I finished the mobile design. I'll go ahead and walk you through it. So starting up here at the top, we have this navigation section. I went ahead and got icons from the noun project and brought them in and made sure they line up with the grid. They're also evenly spaced, and they're roughly the same size as the other icons, and I have my logo in the center. Next, we have this promotional section that represents a video, so maybe I could showcase a pair of shoes that we're promoting, and yeah, we have that section here. Underneath, we have our categories section, which we know this icon represents an image or some sort of icon. So maybe I could have an image right here of shoes, and then I have this text in front, and I just repeated that for all 4. And I use like consistent spacing in between these. Just being consistent is very important. Underneath here we have this carousel section, and pretty much it's just going to allow the user to have an area where they can scroll through here and view the new arrivals of shoes. Maybe we'd even want an arrow showing that the user can scroll through here, or maybe we want a little area down here that shows where they're at in their scrolling. So this area also does break the grid, but there's a reason for it. So you see this isn't lined up with our grid, it's going outside the margin, or it's going into the margin. That's perfectly fine to do. Just have reason if you're going to break the grid. See, one doesn't make sense if I move this over here. There's no reason to do that. So make sure to have reason if you break the grid. Same thing with this text. It breaks the grid, but it's lining up with this box right here. So if you're going to break the grid, have reason. Under that, we have this newsletter if they want to join the mailing list, and that just follows the grid as well. And under here, I made a little rectangle and added text for the footer. And yeah, that pretty much completes the mobile design. And something else I want to mention, if you're going to change the frame size, so for example, if I needed the iPhone frame to be longer and you've already added things to this, make sure you hold Control when you're dragging. You're going to let go of the click and then let go of Control. The reason for this is, for example, you see this text right here. Let me get back to where we were. So if I just drag this frame, you see that text is falling down up here. So make sure to hold Control, drag, let go of the click, then let go of Control if you need to resize it. But once you complete your mobile design, what I'd do is click out here, go to Prototype, make sure whatever you designed it on is what your prototype is set to. So here, iPhone 14, I'm going to match it, and I'm going to go ahead and run this. Now, this is going to simulate what it would look like on a phone, so you can check your work, and I would give this to a friend or anyone that's around you that can look at it as well, because it might look good to you, but it doesn't mean it looks good to them, and you can make changes and fix it. Alright, so once you've refined your mobile version, you want to go ahead and move on to step 6, which is designing your wireframe for tablet. So what you're going to do is go up here to frame, and you're grabbing an iPad. I'm going to line this up with our mobile, and I'm going to go ahead and create a grid for the tablet. We want this grid to be an 8-column count. We can do a 34 margin and a 16 pixel gutter. Next, we can go ahead and hold Control and select some elements from our mobile version. Hold Alt and click and drag. Keep on Alt and then let go. I want these to be lined up with the mobile version the best I can, which they are. And I can go ahead and start spacing these a little bit more. So go ahead and do that. And I'll go ahead and put this logo in the center. So this should be even, yeah, 267, 267. And you're pretty much just going to repeat this process of selecting elements and dragging them over, resizing them, and reshaping them. Alright, so I was working on designing the tablet version of the wireframe, and I've ran into my first problem. So when I drag the newsletter over to the tablet, I'm having trouble figuring out a way I can make this flow well and just look good for the tablet. So what you can do is get inspiration from websites, and you may have to make a serious change, or you might realize, hey, this website done a certain way, maybe I can do it in a similar way. But if you're going to make a huge change, say I completely change the way this newsletter looks, for example, I could add it to the footer section, and if I do that, I want it to be coherent with the mobile version. So I wouldn't want to leave the mobile wireframe looking like this if I added this to the footer. I would want to add the newsletter to the footer as well. So keep that in mind. If you make big changes, make sure to make those changes in the other wireframes as well. Alright, so I've finished the wireframe for the tablet. I'll go ahead and walk you through what I've done. So of course I've dragged all my elements and brought them over here, but I've made changes. For example, I've added space in between elements. So these icons, there's more space. Maybe I'll make this logo slightly larger, I'm not sure. I went ahead and dragged this over, made it wider. I changed the way these stack, so now they stack with 4 columns. And I've went ahead and dragged this over, it shows more now, and made them a little bit larger. I've added this newsletter, and the way I solved that problem is I just centered it, and that fixed it. There's probably 100 ways I could have done it, but I think that's the simplest, and it looks clean doing it that way. And went ahead for the footer and made all this just go in line instead of stacked. And again, what I'd recommend doing is setting your prototype from the iPhone. We designed with the iPad mini. And go ahead and run your prototype. Look at it through, oh, I did not click the right frame. Make sure to click your frame when you run your prototype. And yeah, you can go ahead and look at it through this, which I'm satisfied with this, but make sure to give this to people so they can review it as well, because they may see things that you don't, and you can improve it from there. Alright, so moving on to step 7, we're going to design for desktop. So to do that, we're going to grab us a frame. We're just going to grab the desktop frame. We're going to go ahead and line this up to the top of the other one, and we're going to create a grid for this. Want this grid to be a 12 count. We can do a 60 margin, we'll try that, and we can leave the gutter at 20. And pretty much you're just going to repeat the process, except for I'm going to grab these tablet elements, bring them over, and reshape them, resize them, change some things, and make them fit for the desktop. Alright, so I've finished the desktop design. You can go ahead and compare them to the others. One thing I want to point out too is I ended up moving my carousel in my categories section. So before I had the categories above the carousel, but it didn't really flow well, so I just moved the carousel up top. And whatever I do, since I made that change, I went ahead and made the change to the other versions as well. But you can go ahead and see how I've laid this out. So my nav bar looks a little different. Since we're working with a lot more space, we want to fill out some of that space. So I have this hamburger menu. I went ahead and just broken it out and made sure it's consistent spacing. Made the logo a little larger. The search icon looks different now, and I left these pretty much alone. But just made things wider, larger, take up more space. Same thing with this. The carousel is kind of no longer a carousel because we're showing everything we want to show. So we're only going to show 4 things in this, and we're laying that on desktop. This is taller now, and this is larger, and our footer's a little bit larger. So yeah, you're just going to do that and drag things over, make them bigger, and make them fit the desktop. If you want to preview this, go up here, and instead of hitting the present, we're just going to hit preview for the desktop. And we can make this larger, and we can go ahead and just, well, I did not hit the right one. Make sure you hit the frame you want to preview and then run it. And then now you can see what it looks like as a desktop and get feedback and refine it. Alright, so I think that covers everything. We talked about what wireframes are. They're pretty much a blueprint to a website. It's going to give the layout and the flow of the site in an early stage. And in this early stage, we can make informed decisions on the UI and user experience. Before moving on to later stages, we can go ahead and refine everything in this early stage. So yeah, I think we covered everything. If you enjoyed this, or if you have questions, leave them in the comments, and I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. If you want to send me your designs, feel free to at finazocodes@gmail.com, and see you next time.